Before we begin, if you love cinematic sci-fi stories about humans defying the impossible, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about what you would do if you faced a creature the galaxy itself feared. Now let's dive in. Lieutenant Mason Core's shuttle tore through the dense atmosphere of Zathera Prime like a streak of defiance. Static crackled through his comms, the hull shuddering under a pressure that would have flattened weaker craft. He was alone, again. The rest of his squad had vanished 2 months ago, swallowed by the jungle world the Galactic Council called Deathworld X-13. His mission was simple on paper. Locate the missing science team, recover their data, and confirm whether the rumors were true, that something lived down there no army dared face. The planet below was a living bruise. Oceans of black moss glimmered under sickly bioluminescent clouds, trees towered like skeletal towers, their bark pulsing faintly as though blood ran beneath it. Even from orbit, satellites reported the surface shifting, growing. Mason checked his wrist scanner. Oxygen barely breathable, radiation tolerable for a few hours. That was enough. He'd done worse for less. The shuttle landed in a clearing strewn with wreckage, half-buried metal domes and shattered research pods, gnawed open by something with far too many teeth. Mason disembarked, pulse rifle raised, HUD flickering between thermal and motion scans. Nothing moved, yet the air itself felt aware. "Resolute 1 to command," he said into the static. "Touchdown successful. 0 life signs. Proceeding to Site Gamma." No reply. Just the hollow hiss of wind threading through alien trees. He exhaled sharply, sealing the channel. Figures. Every step sank ankle-deep into soil that throbbed faintly, releasing phosphorescent spores that clung to his boots. His visor compensated, filtering the haze into a dark emerald glow. The silence wasn't peace, it was predation. Every sound he made felt like a trigger. He found the first body half a mile in, if it could still be called that. A research exosuit split open from chest to waist, the torso missing, the metal bent outward as if something had burst through from within. Nearby, a recording device blinked weakly. Mason crouched, replayed the last log. "This is Dr. Valen," the voice trembled. "We thought it was instinctive, an apex organism. But it learns. It mimics. The transmission ended in a sharp wet crunch and a growl that felt more felt than heard. Mason's jaw tightened. "Yeah," he muttered. "Sounds friendly." He pressed on, the forest tightening around him, the light dimming into the blue hue of twilight though his watch said midday. Something massive had moved through here recently, branches snapped clean, claw marks etched into stone. He knelt, scanning the grooves. 4 parallel cuts, each deeper than his hand was wide. Not random. Deliberate. Then came the sound, a low clicking rhythm echoing through the trees. Slow. Purposeful. Not mechanical. Mason froze, lowering his rifle, breathing shallow. His scanner flared, thermal contact, 30 meters, approaching. The trees parted. It emerged with the grace of a nightmare. 12 feet of coiled sinew and armor-like skin, eyes like molten amber, twin mandibles twitching as it exhaled a mist that shimmered under the alien light. The predator. Raskol, the apex of Zathera. Every instinct screamed to fire. Every fragment of training demanded retreat. Yet Mason stood his ground. It tilted its head, studying him as if curious. He raised his rifle, but it didn't move closer. The creature's gaze shifted to the patch on his armor, a faded Terran insignia. For a heartbeat, its mandibles clicked in what almost resembled a question. Mason took a cautious step back. "I'm not here to hunt," he said quietly. "Just looking for people." "You kill them?" A low growl rolled through the clearing. Not quite a yes, not a denial. Then the creature lowered itself, sniffed the ground where Mason stood and, astonishingly, turned away. It vanished between the trees with a speed that seemed to bend light, leaving only a ripple of displaced air and the faint scent of ozone. Mason exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Right," he whispered. "Definitely friendly." He found the remnants of the main research station an hour later, its walls torn apart, consoles melted by some form of acidic secretion. Amid the ruin he located a central core still intact. The log files confirmed his growing suspicion. The scientists hadn't been killed outright, they had experimented on the creature and it had learned from them. Adapted. The more they studied it, the smarter it became. The night came fast on Zathera. When the last light faded, the forest came alive with motion, shapes skittering through the fog, whispers like shifting fabric. Mason activated his perimeter drones. Their red sensors blinked across the clearing. Then one blinked out. He spun, rifle ready. A metallic clang followed. Another drone offline. His heart thudded. The air shimmered. Something moved through the mist, unseen but enormous. Mason Core, a voice rasped through his comms. Not human. Distorted. Mimicked. He froze. Who said that? No answer, just static and another whisper. Then the voice again clearer. You, fight, alone? The words hit him harder than any ambush could have. The creature wasn't mimicking random sound. It was speaking to him. The ground trembled. A shadow loomed behind him, silent until it chose not to be. Mason spun too slow. A blur of motion, a metallic claw clamped around his rifle, wrenching it aside like a toy. He stumbled back, hand reaching for his sidearm, but the beast stopped him with a gesture. Open palm, low growl. Not attack. Not yet. It crouched, amber eyes reflecting the faint glow of his visor. It studied his face. Its mandibles flexed and the strange imitation of speech returned, softer this time. Not prey. The word carried weight. Understanding. Mason's hand hovered near his weapon, but he didn't draw. The predator leaned closer until its breath fogged his visor. Then it straightened, gave a short clicking sound, almost like acknowledgement, and melted back into the jungle. Mason stood there, shaking from adrenaline and disbelief. The apex predator of an entire world had spared him. Not from mercy, but recognition. He looked out into the dark where it had vanished and whispered, "You're watching me, aren't you? Seeing what I'll do next." The wind stirred the trees and for an instant, he thought he heard the faintest echo of that clicking laugh. When he returned to his shuttle hours later, his logs recorded the encounter as protocol demanded, but his voice betrayed something new, curiosity, even respect. "Mission log," he said quietly. "Confirmed contact with Zetheran apex organism. Displays advanced intelligence. No hostility, yet. I believe it's testing me." He hesitated, staring through the viewport into the endless jungle mist. "It could have killed me. It didn't. And I think I know why." He shut off the recorder, eyes narrowing as he watched faint amber eyes glint in the treeline far below. "It's waiting for me to come back." And somewhere deep in that alien forest, the predator turned its head toward the stars, toward him, and smiled in its own terrible way. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story about humanity standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's fiercest predator, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about who you think would win, man or monster. Now, let's return to the jungles of Zethera. Mason Core hadn't slept since his first encounter. Every sound from the forest, every hiss of wind, felt deliberate as if the jungle itself listened. He'd seen the creature's intelligence in its eyes, and it haunted him. Not fear exactly. Fascination. The way it had said not prey echoed in his head. No animal should have known those words. He'd sent his data back to the fleet before losing contact. The signal never reached them. Days passed in the hostile wilderness as he scavenged through the ruins of the research outpost, finding evidence of one more human presence, a private mercenary crew. Their gear was fresh, their ship still smoldering. Whoever they were, they'd come for the same thing, the predator. The sun on Zethera was a pale wound in the sky, its light filtered through layers of living mist. Mason crouched over a shattered comms unit, listening to faint chatter on a mercenary frequency. The voices were close. He adjusted his visor to locate them, 5 heat signatures moving with military precision. They were armed and confident, too confident for a planet that devoured armies. A rustle behind him. He swung his rifle around, but it wasn't the predator. It was a merc. A tall man in dark armor leveled a shotgun at his chest. "Drop it, scout," the man said, voice thick with disdain. "Didn't expect company." Mason raised his hands. "You're trespassing on a restricted world. Name and purpose." The man chuckled. "Purpose? Bounty. Galactic Council's paying a fortune for that beast. Heard you found it. Thought we'd let you flush it out for us." The mercs surrounded him before he could move. 5 shadows closing in, their rifles humming with charged plasma. Mason understood then that he was bait. They bound his wrists, dragged him toward a ravine thick with vines. The leader, a scarred veteran with mirrored goggles, tapped a transmitter on his wrist. "Let's see if it takes the bait." They chained Mason to a fallen beam, set up sonic emitters, and began broadcasting an ultra-low frequency pulse. It wasn't a call, it was a challenge. The jungle went silent. The mercs grinned. "It's coming," one whispered. It came like a storm. Branches snapped overhead, trees bent, and the clearing exploded into chaos. Mason saw only fragments, a blur of motion, a flash of talons, a scream cut short. The first merc disappeared into the canopy, blood misting through the air. The others fired wildly. Plasma bolts carved smoking holes through the foliage, but nothing stopped the thing that hunted them. The predator struck from every angle. A merc fell to his knees, clutching his throat where invisible claws had opened him. Another tried to run but was lifted into the air and torn apart before his body hit the ground. The leader turned, rifle trembling, just in time to see his own reflection in those amber eyes. The jungle swallowed him whole. Silence returned as swiftly as it had vanished. Only Mason remained, alive, bound, breathing hard. He heard footsteps, deliberate and heavy. The creature stepped into view, drenched in alien blood that steamed off its skin. It regarded Mason without hostility, tilting its head the same way it had before. Mason swallowed hard. "Guess you didn't like the company?" No response. The predator crouched beside the beam, talons slicing through the metal restraints with surgical precision. Mason rubbed his wrists, unsure whether to thank it or run. "Why save me?" he asked. The creature's mandibles clicked softly, a sound halfway between language and growl. Then words rough and broken, "They, weak. You, fight." Mason frowned. "Fight? I didn't." The creature's arm lashed out, striking his chest just hard enough to knock him backward. I wanted him to fight. Testing him again. Mason rolled to his feet, instincts kicking in. He lunged, swung, dodged a backhand that shattered stone. The creature didn't kill him, it was gauging him. Measuring. "Fine," Mason growled. "You want a fight?" He snatched up a fallen merc's plasma dagger and charged. Sparks flew as blade met claw, light searing the air between them. The fight became a rhythm, attack, dodge, counter, each move a conversation of survival. Mason's arms ached, his lungs burned, but the predator seemed pleased. Its eyes gleamed brighter with every strike he landed, every time he refused to yield. Finally, Mason stumbled, tripped over a root and landed hard. The creature loomed above him, massive and unstoppable. But instead of striking, it stopped. The blade lowered. Its voice came again, more certain this time. "You, do not run." Mason looked up, gasping. Never been good at that. The predator's mandibles spread, releasing a low, vibrating sound that Mason almost mistook for a chuckle. Then it reached to its own shoulder, tore out a glowing shard lodged deep in its hide, a remnant from the merc's attack, and tossed it aside. Green blood dripped to the ground. It pointed at the wound, then at Mason. "Fix." He blinked. "You're asking me to help you?" The creature grunted, agreement or command. Mason pulled a medkit from his belt and worked in silence, sealing the gash with coagulant foam. The predator flinched but didn't resist. Up close, Mason saw scars old and new across its body. It had been hunted before. Always survived. When he finished, it stood, towering over him, testing the limb. Then it extended a massive, clawed hand. Mason hesitated only a second before taking it. The grip was strong, unyielding, but not cruel. For the first time he realized the thing before him wasn't just a killer, it was a warrior bound by a code he didn't yet understand. The creature released him, stepped back into the shadows. Before vanishing, it looked over its shoulder and said a single word that chilled and intrigued him both. "Brother." Mason stood alone in the wreckage of the clearing, breath unsteady. Around him lay the broken weapons of the mercenaries, the silent forest and the fading scent of ozone. He retrieved his helmet, activating the recorder. "Mission log," he whispered. "Mercenary ambush neutralized. Predator engaged, and spared me again. It fights like a soldier. Learns like one too. I think it," he paused, unsure of the words, "respects me." He looked toward the darkness where the creature had vanished. Somewhere beyond those trees it was waiting. Not to kill. To see if he would return. He smiled faintly, though it felt strange to do so in a place that had devoured everyone else. "You wanted a fight, big guy. You got one." And as the twin moons rose over Zathera, their light sliding across the carnage, Mason packed his gear, slinging the plasma rifle across his back. The jungle pulsed with quiet life again. For the first time since landing, he wasn't afraid of what waited in the dark. He was part of it now. He started walking, the shadows swallowing him whole, toward the creature that had tested him and somehow chosen him. Before we continue, if you've been hooked by this story of man and monster, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about whether you think Mason can truly trust the predator, or if this alliance will turn deadly. Now let's return to the story. Mason Core stood beneath the harsh white lights of the Galactic Council chamber, wrists bound in cold alloy restraints. The room was enormous, ringed with delegates from 100 species, some towering, others whispering through translucent membranes. Their eyes, lenses, and sensor clusters all fixed on him, the lone human who had survived the death world and walked beside its apex predator. His voice echoed across the hall. I didn't train it. I didn't capture it. It chose not to kill me. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, sharp and fearful. The arbiter of the council, a crystalline being of pale light, leaned forward. Lieutenant Core, it intoned, you expect us to believe that the creature of Zithera, the one that annihilated 3 research colonies, has formed an alliance with you? Mason met its gaze without blinking. You misunderstand. It didn't ally with me. It respected me. The translator drones stuttered mid-air, uncertain how to relay the word respect into the 100 dialects of the chamber. It was a term few species associated with humans. Across the room, a holographic projection displayed footage from his suit recorder. Raskol towering over him, lowering its weapon the moment their hands met. The crowd recoiled at the sight. Some hissed. Others whispered prayers. A representative from the Virian clans rose, his voice trembling. You've unleashed a contagion of defiance. If this beast recognizes human command, what happens when others follow? You risk a new empire, one led by savages. Mason clenched his fists. You call us savages, but you built the thing that tried to kill you. Humanity didn't create your monster. You did. Gasps, angry clicks, murmured outrage. The arbiter silenced them with a wave. Enough. The council will deliberate. The human will remain detained. 2 guards stepped forward, their armor humming with containment fields. Mason didn't resist as they led him through the corridors of the orbiting station. He'd seen fear before, but not like this. They weren't afraid of the predator. They were afraid of him, of what his survival implied. In his cell, the air smelled of sterilization and suspicion. He paced the narrow space, watching the endless sprawl of stars through a reinforced viewport. Somewhere out there, beyond council-controlled space, Zithera turned beneath its dim sun, and he felt it watching him still. The lights flickered. A low tremor passed through the floor. Then the alarms began to wail. He looked up as the cell door hissed open without command. The guards outside were gone. The corridor lights strobed red. Through the static of the intercom, a distorted voice broke through, deep, rough, familiar. Brother. Mason's blood ran cold. Raskol. The sound of tearing metal echoed from somewhere above, followed by the heavy footfalls of something massive moving through the ship. Mason rushed out, grabbing a fallen guard's blaster. The hallway ahead was a trail of ruin, doors crushed inward, walls dented, wires sparking. The scent of ozone and alien blood filled the air. He rounded a corner and froze. Raskol loomed there, twice as terrifying under the station's flickering lights. Its claws were slick with something not entirely organic. Behind it lay the broken shells of drones and turrets. You shouldn't be here, Mason hissed. They'll? The creature's head tilted, mandibles clicking in irritation. They take you. They were interrogating me, not harming me. The amber eyes narrowed. Cage is harm. Mason almost laughed. You broke into the most secure orbital station in the sector just to tell me that? The predator didn't answer. Instead, it stepped aside, revealing a corridor torn open to vacuum. Beyond it, a small transport docked where none should have been. Mason hesitated. You want me to leave with you? Raskol rumbled low in its chest, the sound vibrating through the walls. My pack. The words hit harder than he expected. In the weeks since Zithera, Mason had tried to rationalize their bond, shared survival, mutual respect, a soldier's understanding of strength. But pack was something deeper. Instinctual. He holstered the blaster, made his choice, and followed. They moved through the chaos like ghosts. The station's defenses were still trying to understand what was happening. Doors sealing behind them, turrets locking onto phantoms. When the escape shuttle detached, Mason felt the weight of his decision settle in his chest. He wasn't just fleeing a prison. He was abandoning humanity's authority for something older, purer. As the stars stretched into streaks through the viewport, Mason turned to his unlikely companion. You risked everything coming here. Why? Raskol's gaze fixed on the void ahead. War coming. What war? The creature made a low growl that sounded almost like pain. Maker's return. Mason frowned. The scientists? The predator nodded once. Not your kind. The ones before. They made me, made many. They come to claim worlds again. The words landed heavy, layered with meaning. It wasn't just a warning, it was a prophecy. Mason leaned back, eyes on the endless dark. Then we stopped them. Raskol turned its head slowly toward him. You help me fight? Mason's mouth twitched into a tired grin. Guess that makes us even. Silence settled between them, not awkward but understanding. Two beings from opposite ends of existence, united by the same truth. Both had been tools once and both had broken free. Hours later, the shuttle drifted in the shadow of a derelict mining station far from Council space. Mason shut down the engines and activated a cloaking field. Raskol sat motionless across from him, like a statue carved from war itself. "You know," Mason said quietly, "the Council will brand us both as threats. You for what you are, me for what I've become." The creature tilted its head. "They fear you." He met its gaze. "They fear us." The predator's mandibles spread slightly, that half-smile Mason had learned to recognize. Then from the darkness outside, a faint light blinked, a distant transmission. Mason tapped the console. The message was short and encrypted, but the coordinates were unmistakable. Zethera. He felt his stomach tighten. "They're going back to your world." Raskol rose to its full height, claws scraping the metal floor. "Then we return first." Mason stared at the coordinates glowing against the glass. Returning to that cursed planet meant walking straight into another nightmare. But somehow he felt calm. Purpose had returned, a mission clear and absolute. He keyed in the jump sequence. "All right, brother. Let's go home." The stars shifted, engines roared, and the shuttle vanished into hyperspace. Two outlaws, man and monster, racing toward the war that waited for them both. Before we continue, if you're captivated by this story of man and predator fighting as one, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about which battle you think will push them to their limits next. Now let's dive back into the action. The mining colony on Arden Prime burned in the dim light of a blood-red sun. Smoke twisted in the sky, acrid and metallic, mingling with the scent of alien flora crushed under fleeing workers' boots. Mason Core crouched behind a rusted transport, scanning the horizon. Beside him, Raskol's shadow stretched longer than any human could comprehend, its massive frame coiled, every sinew ready to strike. The swarm had come, the bioengineered horrors birthed in secret labs long before Mason ever set foot on Zethera. Hundreds, maybe thousands, advancing with a coordinated intelligence that unnerved even the predator. Their limbs were segmented, dripping acidic filaments, eyes clustered in multifaceted patterns. A single strike could strip the paint off a building, and the colony's defenses barely slowed them. Mason tapped a console on his wrist, deploying drones to slow the approach. Plasma bolts streaked through the sky, carving fire trails through the mist. Even so, the swarm pressed forward. "They adapt fast," he muttered, voice tight with focus. "Raskol, we need to." The predator was already moving, faster than thought, leaping over rubble, rending one creature in half before spinning to crush another. Its mandibles flexed with a sound like snapping steel. Mason had never seen a warrior move with such lethal precision. He grabbed a plasma rifle from the transport and fired in bursts, targeting weak points Raskol indicated with sweeping gestures. Together, they were a symphony of destruction, human strategy paired with the raw instinct of a creature evolved to kill everything. A swarm shifted its approach, splitting into two directions. Mason signaled to a group of surviving miners armed with whatever they could carry. "Cover the flank. Push them toward the predator." The humans hesitated at first, but the predator's roar, feral and commanding, changed their minds. It struck through the line, clawing through metal scaffolding, leaving a path for Mason's team to funnel the swarm into traps he had rigged. Hours passed as the battle raged. Mason and Raskol moved in tandem, anticipating each other's actions without words. A creature lunged at Mason from behind. The predator intercepted it mid-air, crushing it against the ground. Mason returned the favor, taking out two more advancing forms before diving under Raskol's swinging tail. Then came the hive's core, a grotesque mass of writhing limbs and eyes, pulsating with a sickly bioluminescence. It had been directing the swarm, and its attention now focused entirely on them. "Time to end this," Mason said, eyes narrowing. He tapped a detonator in his hand. The plan was simple, suicidal: destroy the core, collapse the hive, or die trying. Raskol growled low, mandibles clicking in acknowledgement. Together, it rumbled. They charged. The hive struck first, tentacles lashing, acidic secretion spraying across the floor. Mason dove behind a pillar, firing at weak points, while Raskol tore through the mass with claws and teeth that glimmered with alien strength. They moved as one, a seamless partnership forged in survival and respect. A tentacle swept across Mason, knocking him to the ground. Raskol was there in an instant, slamming it into rubble with such force the entire floor shuddered. Mason scrambled to his feet, detonator in hand. Now! The explosion ripped through the hive, sending shockwaves across the colony. The creatures screeched in pain and confusion, disoriented. Raskol launched itself into the heart of the hive, claws slicing, teeth gnashing, while Mason activated the final charge. The core's destruction caused a chain reaction. Acid burned through the remaining swarm, explosions scattered debris, and the colony's buildings shuddered. In the chaos, a massive shockwave threw Mason across the floor. He struggled to rise, vision blurred. Raskol appeared beside him, a slash across its flank from a final, desperate strike. Its amber eyes locked on Mason, and for the first time, Mason saw vulnerability in the apex predator. Without hesitation, he fired a stabilizing energy beam at the wound, helping stem the bleeding. "You saved me," the predator rumbled, voice low but resonant. "You saved me first," Mason replied, adrenaline and exhaustion mixing in his voice. They paused, breathing heavy, surveying the aftermath. The colony was damaged but intact. The swarm was obliterated. Silence fell like a blanket over the battlefield, broken only by the hiss of cooling plasma and distant fires. Mason looked at Raskol, towering and magnificent even in its wounded state. "We make a good team." The creature's mandibles clicked once, a sound Mason had learned to interpret as acknowledgement. Then it stepped back, surveying the horizon. More coming. Mason's stomach tightened. He had expected this victory to bring relief. Instead, it felt like a warning. The hive had been only the beginning. Somewhere, deeper in the labs that created these monsters, the masterminds waited. They would come for more, and Mason knew the council wouldn't help. He sheathed his plasma rifle and approached the predator. "We don't have time to wait for them to strike first. We take the fight to them." Raskol lowered its massive head, amber eyes locking onto his. "Pack leads." A grin flickered across Mason's face. "Then let's go, brother." They moved together through the smoldering remains of the colony, humans following where Mason led, and the predator clearing every obstacle with terrifying efficiency. The survivors looked on with awe and fear. Even those who had once dismissed humanity now whispered the truth. A human and the galaxy's deadliest predator could stand against anything. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the battlefield in crimson shadows, Mason and Raskol stood side by side. The air vibrated with the silent promise of battles yet to come. The hive had been defeated, but a war loomed, one that would test their bond, their strength, and the very limits of what it meant to be a warrior. Mason exhaled slowly. "We've only just begun." Raskol's eyes gleamed, reflecting the dying light. "Good fight. Better, coming." And with that, they disappeared into the alien night, two forces united against a galaxy that had never expected them to endure, let alone prevail. Before we conclude, if you've been gripped by this story of man and apex predator defying the galaxy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about what you think makes their bond unbreakable. Now let's witness the finale. The wreckage of Zethera Prime sprawled beneath Mason Core and Raskol like a battlefield frozen in time. Fires smoldered in jagged canyons, clouds of ash drifting over shattered research stations. The swarm's remnants still writhed in isolated pockets, and the air was thick with the acrid tang of chemical decay. Mason tightened the straps on his armor, checking the pulse of his gear and the dwindling energy of his rifle. Every sensor, every readout confirmed the truth they already knew. The hive had one final, desperate contingency. Raskol loomed beside him, the once pristine armor of its hide torn and streaked with green plasma burn marks. Its amber eyes glimmered with focus and intelligence that bordered on human comprehension. Mason watched it move with lethal precision, aware that this creature had saved his life countless times, yet still carried the weight of a predator who had outlived its kind. "We push forward," Mason said, voice calm despite the storm of nerves coiling in his gut. "No retreat. We end this." The predator's head inclined once, mandibles clicking softly. "Together, till end." They descended into the central hive, a cavernous expanse of twisting tunnels, pulsing with bioluminescent filaments and the throbbing hum of the core. Mason could feel the vibrations beneath his feet, the living heart of the hive reacting to their presence. The creatures were waiting, organized, smarter now, and yet every instinct screamed that Mason and Raskol were not ordinary prey. As they advanced, the first wave struck. Tentacles whipped like steel cables, acidic filaments spraying in arcs meant to dismember. Mason dove behind a jagged outcropping, firing plasma bolts with surgical precision, while Raskol tore through the swarm, claws and teeth moving with preternatural coordination. Every strike of the predator's talons shattered chitin and bone, every roar shook the tunnels, signaling a power no one could ignore. They moved in unison, Mason predicting the creature's movements with a human tactical mind, Raskol executing instinctual counters with terrifying elegance. A moment came when Mason was pinned under a falling shard of metal. Raskol reacted instantly, slashing through the debris and tossing him free, amber eyes meeting his. For a heartbeat, Mason glimpsed something in the predator's gaze: trust. Faith. The bond that had been forged in fire and blood now proved itself in the shadow of death. The final chamber opened before them, the hive core pulsing violently. It was enormous, a grotesque lattice of muscle, chitin, and bioluminescent energy. The mastermind of the swarm, the architect of Zathera's terror, awaited. Its eyes, multiple and glowing, fixed on them with a mixture of recognition and malice. Mason's hands tightened around his rifle. "Raskol," he said quietly, "we end this here. Together." The predator lowered its head, flexed its claws, and produced a sound that resonated in Mason's chest. "Pack endures." They charged. Mason unleashed a storm of plasma fire while the predator leapt ahead, scattering the minions that tried to intercept him. The hive's core writhed, lashes striking in desperation, acid searing the floor where Mason and Raskol moved. Each attack brought them closer, each movement choreographed between human ingenuity and apex instinct. The core shifted, tentacles lashing outward in a final, desperate counter. Mason saw the moment, calculated the path, and triggered the self-destruct sequence he had rigged earlier. A countdown began, 40 seconds. The hive shrieked in unison, sensing the imminent collapse of its world. Raskol's amber eyes fixed on Mason. "Leave, not you." "I'm not leaving you," Mason replied, adrenaline sharpening every nerve. "We do this together." They moved closer to the core. The energy pulsed like a living sun, every filament radiating imminent destruction. Tentacles struck, claws slashed, and plasma fire arced through the chamber. Mason dove atop a tentacle, firing point blank, while Raskol seized the core with all its strength, tearing through the structure to expose its weak points. Time slowed. Mason and Predator were no longer separate beings, they were one. Each action of one complemented the other. Every strike, every dodge, every leap was a testament to their trust and the bond of survival. The self-destruct countdown blinked relentlessly, a heartbeat away from annihilation. Mason's voice broke through the chaos. "Now Raskol. Hit it." With a final roar, the predator plunged its talons into the core, claws ripping through the pulsing mass. Mason detonated the charges simultaneously. The explosion was blinding, violent, and deafening. The chamber collapsed in a storm of fire, debris, and bioelectric discharge. When the light faded, Mason opened his eyes. Dust and smoke choked the air. He coughed, scanning frantically. Raskol staggered toward him, wounded but alive, amber eyes softened by relief and something that almost resembled gratitude. Mason dropped to one knee, pressing a hand to the predator's flank to steady it. "We did it, brother," he whispered. Raskol leaned into the touch, mandibles clicking softly. Its gaze swept over the ruined hive, and then, almost imperceptibly, toward Mason. And, here, but fight, never over. Outside, the galaxy watched. News feeds from scattered fleets transmitted the explosion's aftermath, Zathera Prime reduced to smoldering ruins. Mason's name, once a simple designation in the logs of the Galactic Council, spread across sectors as a symbol of audacity, courage, and the unimaginable. A human who had fought beside a predator feared by the galaxy and survived. Years later, explorers would find fragments of the Resolute, twisted and scorched, alongside two skeletal forms, one human, one alien, intertwined as if sleeping. And in the data logs recovered from Mason's recorder, one final entry remained, smudged and fragmented. The galaxy feared the predator. Until it slept beside a human, and fought as one. Raskol's final act had been both a warning and a promise. Mason had survived because of trust, because of bond, and because they had become more than predator and prey, they had become brothers. The stars above Zathera Prime twinkled cold and distant, but in the hearts of those who knew the story, fire burned. A legend had been born. A human and the deadliest predator the galaxy had ever known, united, defiant, and unbreakable. And somewhere beyond the veil of space, Mason's voice whispered one last truth, carried on the winds of the void: "We've only just begun." Raskol's amber eyes reflected the distant stars, unwavering. The pack endured, and the galaxy would never forget.